I am done. There are no comments left that I will make.
What about all the Better Business Bureau?
She is a local tax preparer, an elected official, but a Channel 2 Action News investigation found that she also has a history of preying on clients. We uncovered a trail of fraud, schemes, and complaints that might have cost the state millions of dollars. Investigative reporter Jody Fleischer here with what she's uncovered and what is being done about it.
Justin, Ruth Barr has been on and off of Hapeville City Council for more than a decade, but voters had no idea she's racked up lawsuits, liens, and complaints for ripping off clients who went to her to do their taxes. Now, our questions have state investigators on her trail, which includes many unhappy returns.
Your accountant is the person that knows everything about you.
But Nonyao DeLongkey didn't know anything about her accountant. For example, that she wasn't one. Hapeville City Councilwoman Ruth Barr is a tax preparer.
I trusted her to do my taxes for 30 years, and she seems to be a successful businesswoman.
Turns out Barr wasn't that either, with a trail of foreclosures and tax liens. DeLongkey really wishes she'd known about this lawsuit from another tax client who alleged fraud and deceit after she loaned Barr money.
I was in an emotional roller coaster.
Barr knew DeLongkey's ex-husband had just passed away and approached her with a real estate investment to buy an office building.
I first said no, I'm not interested in investing in property. And so she said, oh, well, how about a loan?
This signed agreement promised monthly repayment. DeLongkey handed Barr a check for $182,000, but Barr never bought that building.
It's my whole life savings. Faith in people. It hurts.
DeLongkey won a fraud judgment against Ruth Barr for $237,000. Barr hasn't paid a penny, even though she'd found another windfall months earlier, $109,000 for another supposed real estate investment.
My father was devastated. He was sick. He kind of just gave up after we found out that the money was gone.
Leslie Bass-Tovar lost her father just 8 weeks after he found out he'd lost his retirement money to Ruth Barr, his own sister-in-law. She'd convinced him to cash out his IRA and invest in this old house in Hapeville.
She knew how to do that, and we had faith and trust that she would.
After all, she was family, but Barr picked up the check from his hospital room and started spending. Bank records show she blew through the entire $100,000 in just 30 days.
I want to see her held accountable for what she's done. I want to see her go to jail.
A grand jury indicted Barr for theft just one day after Hapeville voters elected her. We caught up with her after a court hearing.
It is a family matter, basically, and it's a family that got upset over something that shouldn't have been upset over.
No, that's not the case at all. She stole my father's retirement.
And Barr clearly didn't want any questions about her past.
What about the civil fraud judgment from Ms. DeLongkey?
That's something else entirely, and I'm not going to discuss it.
Well, we have a deposition where you told her you were going to pay her back, and you never did.
Yes, I know. I'm done.
But we weren't. We wanted to ask Barr why her tax office has an F rating from the Better Business Bureau with 5 unanswered complaints.
If she's willing to play the numbers with us as individuals that are paying her to do her job, what's she going to do with a city's money?
You'll hear much more from those taxpayers and why thousands of tax clients who trusted Barr could now be on the hook to pay thousands of dollars. The state launched an immediate investigation when we asked about Barr's tax business, and investigators already seized her computers and her records.
Jody, can she lose her license here? Can she face discipline for this kind of activity?
You know, we went looking for that. We were trying to find any prior disciplinary action against her, and we were stunned to learn there is absolutely no oversight for tax preparers in Georgia. I could go into business doing it tomorrow with no training or anything. That's also part of our story coming up tonight at 6.
So you really have to know who you're getting your services from.
Absolutely.
Jody, thank you. A Channel 2 Action News investigation. Thousands of Georgia taxpayers could owe the state millions of dollars. Our investigation exposed questions about a local tax preparer with a history of fraud. She's also an elected official. Channel 2's investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is here with what she uncovered and how a lack of oversight can put all of us in jeopardy.
Jovita, we started digging into this city councilwoman after her arrest for stealing money from a family member. We found a past littered with fraud, investment schemes, and her own financial trouble. But it's the complaints from her tax clients that really raised suspicion, and now state investigators are going after her for many unhappy returns.
Jennifer and Rusty Perkins enjoy their weekends reenacting Civil War battles. They both have full-time jobs, so it's a hobby.
I work for a company. She works for a company. We have no business expenses.
But you wouldn't know that from their tax returns prepared by Hapeville City Councilwoman Ruth Barr.
I figured that she knew exactly what she was doing. That's why I went back year after year. I always liked the fact that she was able to find the refund. I didn't think nothing about it.
Until they got this audit from the IRS questioning their Civil War reenactment business.
I was kind of dumbfounded. I don't know what I can and can't deduct, so that's why I use a CPA.
But Ruth Barr is not a CPA. She's a tax preparer, and a questionable one, with an F rating from the Better Business Bureau for unanswered complaints.
After we were contacted by you, we started looking at some of the returns that she's filed in the last year.
The State Department of Revenue says a whopping 80% appear to contain some sort of fraud. Another red flag is the high volume of returns from her tiny office, more than 20,000 in the last 4 years.
We started noticing some schemes that she was using to inflate the refund amount for taxpayers.
But they needed her records to prove it. On Friday, investigators hauled away Barr's filing cabinets, boxes of paperwork, and 24 computers in a search warrant that alleges tax fraud, false statements, and forgery. She may have cost the state millions of dollars in fraudulent refunds.
Every taxpayer in the state of Georgia is a victim.
And investigators had no idea because Georgia has no oversight of tax preparers. No training, no licensing, no disciplinary action.
There is not a board or an agency that a taxpayer could directly report on the situation because of the lack of licensing.
Each return can carry a $5,000 fine, but Barr isn't the only one in trouble. Her clients, thousands of them, are on the hook whether they knew their refunds were bogus or not.
They got the money, they didn't deserve it, and they're going to have to pay it back.
Barr is also suspected of failing to report her employees' income to avoid paying the taxes. And she has her own trail of tax liens, lawsuits, and bogus investments.
It just seems like you have a long history here that's never been addressed, ma'am.
She did not want to answer to any of it.
I am done. There are no comments left that I will make.
Do you have anything to say to your tax customers who say that
My tax
gotten
customers,
them in trouble with the IRS?
no comment.
Rusty and Jennifer already owe the IRS more than $5,000.
We're getting by, but it's a little tough.
It'd be a lot easier if we didn't have to pay.
And now they'd like to see Barr pay as well.
I think she needs to be put out of business. And she needs to spend some time behind some bars.
State investigators told me this has become one of their biggest cases ever involving a tax preparer. It will take them months to go through all of the documents seized in that search warrant, and they eventually plan to file criminal charges.
And so just to get this right, even if the taxpayers had no idea there was any fraud involved in their returns, they're the ones who have to pay back money?
That's correct. But remember, we're talking about millions of dollars refunded to people who were not owed that money. Many told us Barr's business was extremely successful and profitable because she could always find you that refund when nobody else could.
Got to double check your services.
You do.
Thank you, Jody.
I wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing I was doing that to people.
The fallout is growing from a Channel 2 Action News and AJC investigation into a tax preparer with a history of fraud. We've heard from dozens of you who are worried about paying back years of tax refunds to the state of Georgia. Well, now we've learned that tax preparer targeted some of the people we count on most. Channel 2's investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is here with just how big of a problem this has become. Jody?
Jovita, state investigators say we could be talking up to $6 million in fraudulent refunds. Those taxpayers will get letters in the mail in June. They'll have to prove the deductions they claimed or pay the money back. And about a third of the victims we've heard from are firefighters, paramedics, or police who are now facing their own emergency.
It's a profession where trust in your coworkers means the difference between life and death. They share everything, so why not a recommendation for a tax preparer?
Word of mouth spreads fast in the fire, police, and EMS business. I heard that, she was really good.
Hapeville City Councilwoman Ruth Barr's tiny business became the tax office of choice for dozens of public safety workers. Retired firefighter Jason Montgomery says Barr was known for being able to find the refund.
I mean, it wasn't anything shady. It wasn't like everybody was just like, saying, hey, go to her, you know, she'll get you back all this money. And
like many of his colleagues, Jason thought Barr specialized in public safety deductions, but now, looking closely at his own returns,
that's just outrageous.
he spots business expenses he didn't really have.
I have no idea what that's for. I mean, I don't own a business.
Many who sent us their returns found Barr deducted thousands of dollars for meals while on the job with no documentation.
They've all said pretty much the same thing, that she kind of put herself out as an expert.
Georgia's Department of Revenue is now combing through every tax return to come out of B&B accounting in the past 3 years. Investigators hauled away an entire truck full of evidence in what's become one of their largest tax preparer fraud cases ever. Nearly 8,000 taxpayers could have to pay back millions of dollars in refunds.
Once we started asking them about specific information on their return, we kind of realized that most of the stuff is made up.
It makes me sick, honestly.
Ashley Shoemaker was used to getting a refund doing her taxes herself, so 2 years ago when TurboTax said she owed thousands, she wanted a second opinion.
My coworker said she's great, go see her. Sure enough, she got us $4,200 back.
Now the new mom worries they'll have to pay it all back and then some.
It's going to be a big strain on our family.
And the family paid Barr more than $400 to get them into this mess with those same telltale business expenses.
Looking back on it, maybe I should have researched that more, but I trusted her.
Jason lost that trust back in 2012 when Barr stole his tax refund. He didn't have a bank account at the time, so she deposited the nearly 10 grand into her own business account.
It's unimaginable, unimaginable. And she's an elected official now.
Even after this court judgment, Barr wouldn't pay it back.
She took money away from my family, away from my 3 children. I don't know how she got it, how she gets away with it, how she lives with herself.
He's hoping Ruth Barr won't get away this time, especially with so many public safety workers in her line of fire. Many hold 2 jobs just to make ends meet and don't have thousands of dollars lying around to pay back.
And the person that sat behind that desk and did your taxes was a sweet woman who you trusted, but the person that she turned out to be was just pure evil.
Investigators want anyone who used that office in the past 3 years to email them. You can find a direct address set up for this case on our website at WSB-TV.com, along with a statement from Barr's lawyer which denies any wrongdoing. She claims she has more public safety deductions because she does specialize in those, and she says she knows more about it than most accountants. Now, of course, state investigators disagree with that.
So, Jody, this is also, just to be clear, we're talking about state of Georgia taxes. What about the IRS? Where does the IRS stand in all this?
So the 2 agencies do share information back and forth with each other. And so as the state moves forward with its case, the feds could take an interest in it. And remember, state refunds are usually just a fraction of the federal, so that could mean many more millions of dollars involved in this case.
Wow, amazing, all of these people coming forward to talk with you now. Thank you.
An embattled city official who has been the subject of several Channel 2 Action News Atlanta Journal-Constitution investigations is in trouble once again.
And this time, she might have gotten special treatment from police in the city she serves. Channel 2 investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is here with how a bad check has made this an even bigger investigation.
Well, Carol, the business owner who's the victim here told me he really just wanted to collect the money the city councilwoman owed him. She gave him a check to pay her debt, but it was written on a closed account. Police got a warrant for the councilwoman's arrest, but she didn't go to jail. She got to make a deal instead. Talk about why you wrote a check on a closed account.
I did not realize it was closed.
Hapeville Councilwoman Ruth Barr owed this local printing shop $742 for envelopes she ordered for her tax preparer business. The victim says he tried to collect for weeks before cornering her at a council meeting. She handed him this check, signed by her daughter and business partner. But it came back the account was already closed.
She was out of town. She had left checks on the side account. I did not realize that was the account that was closed, and I gave it. And when I found out, I took care of the check.
So you filled out the check? She didn't fill out the check?
Hapeville police never got to the bottom of that either. According to the police report, several attempts at contact with the councilwoman went unanswered. So they swore out this arrest warrant for deposit account fraud. But when officers showed up to serve it, instead of taking her to jail, they let her call the victim and promised to pay cash later that day.
That's kind of totally inappropriate, isn't it? That's not the way it's supposed to be done.
Citizens with Hapeville's Community Coalition want answers.
It looks like special treatment to me.
Police Chief Richard Glavasek told Channel 2 he disagrees. When he canceled a scheduled interview to discuss it, we caught up with him at a public event.
We just want to know if you feel like your officers properly handled this situation.
We're not going to discuss that tonight, okay?
But you're the police chief, and these were your officers.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe they handled this situation properly?
I do. Yes, ma'am, I do.
Not so, says former District Attorney Jeff Brickman. He says he's never seen anything like this in his 15 years as a state and federal prosecutor.
Once a judge orders that somebody is arrested, then they have to be arrested.
He says officers on scene don't have the authority to allow the suspect and victim to work out a deal or to dismiss a warrant. Only the judge can do that. And in this one, there's no documentation.
It doesn't look right. It doesn't smell right. The public reads this and goes, what the heck?
Now, this all happened about a month ago, but just this week, Wednesday night, while we were still waiting on the city records we requested, police showed up at the victim's house and had him sign a statement declining to prosecute the councilwoman. The city has now decided to review the situation to make sure it was handled properly.
At 6, more trouble for a local elected official. She's already accused of defrauding her family, and she's under criminal investigation for inflating tax refunds. A man who tried to help the Hapeville council member says she ripped him off too.
How the hell can you do this to people, ruin their lives?
Channel 2's investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is live in our newsroom with how his story is a lesson for all of us. Jody.
Well, Jovita, you should be very careful about loaning anyone money, especially if you're putting those loans on your credit cards. That's exactly what this man did, and now he says he's the latest in a string of victims, out tens of thousands of dollars, plus he's on the hook for the interest.
I've been working so hard trying to keep myself afloat.
When Kerry Dusek first met Hapeville City Councilwoman Ruth Barr, it was just to prepare his taxes. But within a year, he says she asked for the first of many loans.
She usually ran out of money several months before the tax season.
He says Barr would swipe his credit cards at her business, B&B Accounting, and she'd sign IOUs, promising to pay it back at tax time, plus a few $1,000s extra for Dusek's trouble.
It worked fine. There was no problems.
Until this year, when March 31st came and went without his payout. Now his 4 credit cards are racking up hundreds of dollars a month in interest.
I mean, I'm freaking out because I don't know how much longer I can keep it up.
Between these 4 receipts from last August and October, Dusek says Barr owes him more than $36,000.
You're asking for a true disaster, because if they don't pay you, not only do you not get the money back, but you still owe all the money.
Consumer advisor Clark Howard warns against loaning anyone money, especially on your credit. But he says this doesn't appear to be criminal.
It is not any kind of credit card fraud what they were doing, because these were willing adults. He was willing to allow his card to be run.
It was my tax account. If you can't trust the tax account, who can you trust?
But a Channel 2 AJC investigation earlier this year found Barr is not actually an accountant. She's a tax preparer with an F rating from the Better Business Bureau and a trail of customers facing audits. She also has a $200,000 civil fraud judgment for one investment scheme and an indictment in Gwinnett County for another. Yet she's managed to remain on Hapeville's City Council.
I was stupid and I wasn't thinking. And I was trying to help her out. It's a scam. The whole thing is a scam.
Clark Howard says unless a prosecutor could prove Barr never intended to pay back the money, this would only be a civil matter. Now, Dusek did try filing a civil case, but it was dismissed on a paperwork technicality. He's considering filing again to try to get some of his money back. Now, Barr's attorney did not return our calls for comment. Live in the newsroom, Jody Fleischer, Channel 2 Action News.
New developments in a Channel 2 Action News investigation. Georgia taxpayers are beginning to repay what they owe the state after our investigation exposed a local elected official who apparently inflated thousands of tax returns. It is the largest case of its kind in state history. Channel 2's investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is live in Midtown Atlanta with the impact our investigation is having on all this. Jody?
Well, Jovita, for Georgia taxpayers, it's a huge impact. The state stands to recoup more than $6 million. But for the tax clients who trusted Ruth Barr to prepare their taxes, they're now facing hefty bills, which they have to repay.
Taxpayer after taxpayer told us they thought Ruth Barr could be trusted. After all, she didn't just run this Hapeville tax business, she was also an elected official serving on the city council. But a Channel 2 Action News investigation earlier this year revealed a trail of unhappy customers stuck with IRS audits and bogus tax returns.
Obviously, they're upset. They feel like they were duped. It doesn't matter who's doing your taxes. You definitely need to look.
The state immediately opened a criminal investigation raiding her tax business and alleging Barr inflated the value of her clients' refunds. Now the state is sending these letters asking for that money back. Plus, her clients have to pay what they would have owed had their taxes been done properly.
And if there is information on a return that a taxpayer can substantiate, then we're providing them that opportunity to do so.
The first 100 letters would net the state $872,000. Investigators say there are nearly 8,000 suspicious returns from that office in the past 3 years for an estimated $6.4 million.
Those taxes are rightfully owed to the state. So anyone who isn't paying their fair share is compromising everybody else.
Barr is already facing one criminal charge for an alleged investment scheme and a civil fraud judgment for another. State investigators say that is just the beginning of her legal trouble. Plus, they've already blocked her and anyone in her office from doing taxes next year.
We anticipate several felonies indicted in Fulton County in the next couple months.
Ruth Barr has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. Now, part of our investigation also exposed that Georgia does not require any training or have any oversight of tax preparers. So it's important for you to do your homework and check out the person who's going to be doing your taxes ahead of time. You also should review your tax return before you sign it, just to make sure there are no misrepresentations. Reporting live in Midtown Atlanta, Jody Fleischer, Channel 2 Action News.
And better safe than sorry, Jody. Thank you.
We came across this story during our investigation earlier this year. We exposed how one tax preparer was inflating refunds, leaving her clients on the hook to pay it all back. Unless you use a certified accountant to do your taxes, you have no way of knowing if the person you're trusting is qualified. They could be a felon or just plain incompetent. They don't even have to have any training.
Your barber has one. So does your AC repairman. And as of July 1st, even your lactation consultant has to be licensed here in Georgia. But the person you give your social security number and all of your financial information to do your taxes, no license, no training, no oversight.
It's absolutely crazy. And
Liz Coyle runs Georgia Watch, an organization which advocates for consumers.
People have no idea what level of education these people have, how honest they are, what they're really going to do with their personal information, and whether or not they'll file their taxes accurately.
And she set out to prove it. This tax season, Georgia Watch sent 2 undercover customers into 20 different tax offices, particularly in lower income areas across Fulton County.
How many of the 20 you visited had problems?
All of them.
One of the fake customers pretended to be a single mom who only had her child on weekends, which is not deductible. She recorded what the tax preparers told her.
Sure you don't want to put on that for 7 months?
A lot of the people wanted to make sure that I claimed the child. I can get you back $5,000, $6,000 if you claim the child.
When she had her taxes done correctly by a group that works with the IRS, she should have owed about $200, but one of the places got her back $4,000.
A lot of these places are not going to back their word and their refunds, and so you're out of pocket.
Thousands of Georgia taxpayers are learning that the hard way. This month, the Department of Revenue is sending audit notices to clients who use this Hapeville tax preparer. Agents raided after a Channel 2 and AJC investigation exposed inflated refunds prepared by Hapeville City Councilwoman Ruth Barr and her staff. Investigators say it cost the state and federal government millions of dollars, which those taxpayers will have to pay back.
We'll investigate complaints that are brought to our attention, but our only avenue at that point would be some kind of criminal prosecution.
Revenue Commissioner Lynn Riley says the state needs to do more to protect taxpayers from problem preparers. We found Barr had a history of Better Business Bureau complaints, audited clients, and even civil fraud judgments, but none of it ever triggered an investigation.
There is not a board or an agency that a taxpayer could directly report on the situation because of the lack of licensing.
The lack of oversight also means there's no required education or training, which can sometimes make it tough to tell the difference between mistakes and outright fraud.
It's a tremendous problem. We absolutely want Georgia to put in place some common sense regulations of this industry.
Georgia Watch is urging the Revenue Commissioner to work with the Secretary of State to create an oversight board with some kind of licensing, discipline, or basic training training requirements.
We should be looking to protect taxpayers in every way we can.
Getting your taxes done is a buyer beware situation. You don't want to use an office that sets up shop for a few months and is gone the day after tax day. You also want to get your refund directly from the IRS. If you don't have a bank account, get a check sent directly to you. Now, many places will try to convince you to let them get your tax money. Then they take a bunch more in fees or in products that you don't really need.
Is there anything happening now to fix this?
Well, that would have to be done through the legislature. As of now, only 4 states regulate tax preparers. Congress and the IRS have tried to do it nationwide, but so far that has been unsuccessful.
It seems like that would have already happened
no-brainer, right?
A long time ago. Jody, thank you.
Thanks.